From above, the British Isles are a patchwork of fields, towns and villages. But hidden amongst them are our heritage secrets, the remains of our industrial and social past. And of course, those jewels in the crown, our country houses.
Today we're in Northern Ireland at one of our most important historic buildings, a stately home that was lived in by a family who, for 2 centuries, shaped the political landscape of the United Kingdom. The house has now been left to the nation, and I'll be finding out about its past owners and some of the treasures unearthed within.
Also, Claire Balding will be in the Midlands, taking a close look at some of the finest stained glass ever made.
I don't quite know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this.
Charlie Luxton travels to the Lake District, where he'll be celebrating one of the unsung heroes of the Industrial Revolution.
Once upon a time, these seemingly inconsequential pieces of shaped Lakeland timber were fundamental to an industry that led the world.
This is the story of Britain's hidden heritage. Situated on the tranquil shores of Strangford Lough in County Down, Northern Ireland, is a dark and rather dramatic greystone stately home that in its day has played host to prominent artists, writers, politicians and even royalty. Its gardens, which were planted up in the 1920s, are acknowledged as some of the greatest in the world. And yet to many, this place is unknown. So today I'm going to be finding out why this stately home has remained so enigmatic. Welcome to Mount Stewart.
Since the 18th century, Mount Stewart has been the home of the Stewart family, holders of the title, the Marquis of Londonderry. The estate itself was first acquired in 1744 by Alexander Stewart, a Presbyterian Scot who made his money in the linen trade. The initial house was just a small part of the splendid building that stands here now. A relatively modest beginning for a family who became legendary for the style and scale of their hospitality and their influence over almost 2 centuries of British and Irish politics.
It took quite a while for the house to expand to the grand scale that we see today. Most of the family's money in the early years was spent on forwarding their political ambitions. However, all that was about to change when the third Marquis came along. He married one of the wealthiest women in the country, an heiress to a coal and railway fortune in the northeast of England. So the newlyweds went on a spending spree here at Mount Stewart. They wanted a house to befit their status, and one of the first additions was this enormous portico, big enough to drive a carriage under, something that would impress their guests.
The house and gardens are now owned and run by the National Trust, but members of the family do still reside at Mount Stewart, giving the place a real lived-in country house feel. The Trust's policy here is one of conservation, maintaining the house exactly as it was left. A wealthy family home with over 200 years of wear and tear on display. And although it may now be in suspended animation, keeping it that way is a monumental task. It's the staff preparing for the arrival of the public today, place setting the table with all the family silver. Let's go and have a chat to them. Hello. Hi. Hi. You're both National Trust staff here, aren't you?
Yeah.
How many of you are here, based here?
Well, myself and Louise are 2 full-time staff members.
That's all you've got, just 2 full-time staff members?
2 full-time and 2 part-time. They do the morning clean. The conservation team come in and help us care for the collection every morning.
You've got all the family silver in your hands there. So does this come in and out every night?
does.
For security reasons, obviously, it goes back in the
Yes,
safe.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for conservation, so it's not left out. It's in specially made bags that we can just help care for the silver.
OK, carry on, won't you? Let
All
me
right.
stop you. Well, beautifully placed set, Louise. Is this the family coat of arms engraved on the glass?
It is. It's the Londonderry coat of arms with the L. You've got two different sets.
There's two there, isn't there? I've just noticed that.
Yeah, different eras. We've got different sets here coming together, but you've also got the double L's that have been embroidered on the napkins. They were Edith, Lady Londonderry's coat of arms, and she had them all embroidered on all of her different sets, so she could mix and match.
Would the guests in their day have eaten off the silver plates, or would there be a plate put on top of it?
As far as I can tell, then looking at the usage on the plates, they would have eaten off of them. All the scratch marks are there from successive generations eating on them. So, yeah, very much a used service.
Mount Stewart makes a strong impact on all those who enter. It's hardly surprising, as the whole point of the house was to impress. So who were the intriguing family who created the place?
Gosh, Peter, this is incredible. I love this all.
It's wow, isn't it?
Yeah, it
This
has the wow
double
factor.
height dome ceiling.
Especially all the light flooding in.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Why did the Londonderrys want to get involved in politics in such a big way? They're independently wealthy. They had everything going for them.
Politics was power. And, you know, really the most famous of the Marquises of Londonderry was the second Lord Castlereagh, instrumental in the Act of Union, also heavily involved in the Congress of Vienna.
Sure. So it was all about power, literally.
It was about power and access to power at the highest levels.
Yeah.
King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra stayed here in 1903. The late Queen Mother, as Duchess of York, was here. And of course, people from the arts and the literary world.
Gosh, a whole mixture, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
From cabinet ministers to military commanders, the Londonderry family bought, fought or married itself into the upper echelons of British society. But always Mount Stewart remained the country retreat.
From something very grand to something very subtle. I like this room. Is it a study?
Indeed, yes, it was Lord Londonderry's sitting room when he came to live here from the early 1920s.
Is that him there?
Yes, that's him there, yeah.
Good-looking couple. That's very clever. I've just noticed the shutters in the windows, look. There's faux spines of books stuck onto them.
Yes, those sort of mock bookend shutters, Paul, when they're closed at night, create a sort of fabulous
Oh, it looks like a library then,
atmosphere.
doesn't it,
Yeah.
when they're shut? Oh, what are these? Guest books?
Visitors' books here. This one actually commemorates the royal visit in 1903 of King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra.
Yeah.
And then in more recent times, from 1968, we've
Prince
got
Philip.
Prince Philip, yeah.
Wow.
Mount Stewart has a wonderful feel about it, with many generations of the Londonderry family having lived here, all making the place their own. There's a sort of historical mishmash of furniture and paintings, fabrics and colours, but they all work as a whole, held together by centuries of good taste. Many of the contents are family heirlooms, handed down through the years, but some are national treasures, like this set of 22 unassuming early 19th century chairs, which hold an incredible story that harks back to 1814 and the second Marquis, the famous Lord Castlereagh.
He was instrumental in creating a lasting peace in Europe through his contacts. He gathered together the European leaders in what he called the Congress of Vienna. It was the end of the Napoleonic Wars. This peace lasted for almost 100 years, right up to the First World War. So it was an incredible moment in European history. But to get 22 European leaders sitting down, talking, was absolutely remarkable. And guess what they sat on? These 22 chairs.
Each chair was carefully allocated to a delegate and later embroidered to record who sat where.
So this one is the Duke of Wellington's. You can see his armorial there. And that one's Lord Castlereagh's. That early Congress system became the precursor to the United Nations. How incredible is that?
Later on, I'll be finding out about one member of the Londonderry family who was instrumental in bringing women the vote and somehow found time to create one of the finest gardens in the world. But before that, our reporter Claire Balding has been to the Midlands to find out about the race to save one of the country's greatest ecclesiastical treasures.
Nowadays, Britain's urban skylines are crowded with magnificent architecture. But take yourself back a few hundred years, and the only buildings that towered over the rest were our mighty cathedrals, with their impressive spires soaring skywards and pointing to the heavens. Our medieval cathedrals were not just places of worship, but also tools of instruction, their statues and their stained glass windows telling stories from the Bible that an often illiterate congregation could understand. But the windows in this cathedral tell more than just a biblical story. They tell a tale of a race against time, an historic drama, and a European treasure that only exists because of the dedication of one man. And the man I'm here to find out about is one of Britain's unsung heritage heroes, a man who saved one of the greatest ecclesiastic artworks in Europe and brought it here to Lichfield Cathedral for all to see. His name was Brooke Boothby, poet, translator of literature and patron of the arts. Boothby had the ambition to restore the cathedral in his beloved Lichfield, which had lost all its glass when it was smashed in the English Civil War. Brooke Boothby spent much of his adult life in Europe. In the early 1800s, he happened upon the Herkenrode nunnery, which had been dissolved and plundered during the French Revolutionary Wars. The Cistercian Abbey, 50 miles east of Brussels, had been all but destroyed by Napoleon's troops. However, Boothby discovered that the abbey's stained glass windows, which dated back to the 1520s, were miraculously still intact. They'd been created by artisans at the very top of their trade, and when Boothby saw them, he realised their historical and artistic importance, immediately sending word to the Dean of Lichfield. And these are the
These
letters.
are some of Brooke Boothby's letters, and this is the one that he first wrote, and you can see wonderfully, "My love for a place which I consider with the affection of a second home induces me to trouble you, my dear sir. One of the many fine churches or monasteries which have been destroyed, one has been fortunately preserved. I have contracted for the purchase of 17 windows of what appears to me the finest painted glass I have almost ever seen, which I should greatly desire to be placed in your beautiful choir."
Gosh. Is there any record of how much it all cost?
Yes. Altogether, the glass and the transportation came to £200, and he was very particular that he expected the cathedral to reimburse him for £200. So it was an interest-free business transaction, but he didn't want to be out of pocket.
Once installed, the beautiful windows drew admirers from far and wide. But were you to arrive at Lichfield to see them today, you'd be sadly disappointed. Where is your great Herkenrode glass?
Yeah, don't panic, it's not here, but it is coming back. We took it down in 2010 for some absolutely essential restoration work.
So it's all gone, I mean...
All 7 windows dismantled piece by piece and packed away now for the conservation that needed to be done.
Over the centuries, the wind and rain had taken their toll on this world-class treasure. So the Herkenrode glass has once again had to be dismantled, and this time taken to York, where each and every piece is undergoing extensive renovation. Keith, hi. Finally get to see it. Wow. I don't quite know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this.
Well, this was work that was done, you know, at the height of the stained glass period.
I wasn't expecting a lot of nudie bodies, but it's very beautiful.
Well, this is very much part of a religious scene. This is from the Last Judgment. And you can see from the expressions on the faces that these are ones looking in hope and sort of joy and probably go up to heaven, and yet these are the ones that are being judged and they're distraught and they'll be going down to hell.
As artwork, does it move you emotionally?
It certainly does, because this is art, as far as stained glass is concerned, at its peak.
When the glass returns to the cathedral, it will for the first time sit behind a protective layer of clear glass, which allows Keith and his team to remove some of the excess lead that had been put in over the years to repair leaks and cracks, but which had been obscuring some of the artwork.
The actual leading is in a sound condition, so we're not re-leading the windows, but we are cleaning them, and we're taking the opportunity of actually removing some of the past repairs that were done. And then pieces at the edge we're able to remove and take out the leads completely and glue the two pieces together. So we're edge bonding, you know, cracked pieces and removing leads wherever possible around the perimeter of each panel.
The restoration of the glass panels began over 2 years ago, and it's estimated it'll take another 3 years before they're ready to be reinstated in Lichfield. Now, it's not just a case of repairing the lead and cleaning the glass. These are incredibly intricate works of art, and over the centuries, some of the original brushstrokes have been lost. So the artists here are using both their knowledge of the historic methods of the time and their own artistic skills to replace the finer brushstrokes. Helen Whitaker is the artist who's been entrusted to restore the delicate Renaissance brushstrokes to the former glory that so captivated Brooke Boothby when he first saw them at Herkenrode Abbey. How do you assess this as a work of art? I mean, how good is it?
I mean, this is absolutely exquisite painting. It's not only free, it's bold, it's confident, and it's just full of life. I mean, I can well imagine that Boothby was quite drawn by this.
You're tracing over lines that are there, but presumably in some cases you're having to invent.
No, I mean, fortunately, we can actually see the ghosting lines underneath that give us enough information to actually, you know, trace those lines that were originally there. And what's beautiful is we're actually bringing back what they probably envisaged when they originally did it.
And I don't, you know, this isn't meant to be a disrespectful question, but why did they bother being so intricate with the faces when once it's up in the cathedral, nobody's really going to be able to see them?
As a craftsperson, and I'm sure it was the same then, you love your craft so much that you want to do the best you can for it. So every piece is a jewel and it's treated like one. So I think that, you know, the detail was there, and it didn't actually matter if no one could see it because the quality was there.
In terms of the colour of the paint and also how it's made, are you making it up yourself every time?
Yeah. I mean, what we are using is they used oxides in that day, and we're pretty much recreating the colours with the oxides. Obviously, we're not firing this back painting onto the glass, but the colours we're matching up by various samples, so we're trying to get it as near as we possibly can.
Brooke Boothby was an extraordinary man. The lengths he went to, even in the midst of war, to save the Herkenrode glass that he had discovered and bring it back here to his beloved Lichfield Cathedral. And the exciting thing is that now the glass enters a new chapter, and very soon it will be reinstated here to be enjoyed for centuries to come.
Later on Britain's Hidden Heritage, Charlie Luxton will be visiting a Victorian time capsule that harks back to the Industrial Revolution.
You gonna make it? Yeah, yes, brilliant.
But first, we're back in Northern Ireland, where my tour of Mount Stewart continues. Home to the Marquises of Londonderry for 250 years, it's a house that is full of history. But there's one person in the family, above all others, whose passion for the house and gardens shines out. And that is Edith, Lady Londonderry, the wife of the 7th Marquis. From the 1920s to the 1950s, she transformed the place from what had become a dark Victorian house into a comfortable early 20th century country home.
Isn't it nice to enter a room, Maureen, through a secret door?
It is. Children love this door. Yes, Edith loved this room. This was her sitting room, the best light, the south
You can follow it
facing
around
west.
all day long, can't you?
And the gardens are all around you here.
But it's as if she's just gone out and she's going to come back in.
Yes, all her books are here, her desk, her gardening table, all the little mementos, photographs. Yeah, everything that you would associate with your own home, just on a larger scale.
Everything about this room is charming. I would imagine when the shutter goes up and that crystal chandelier shaped like a ship at night time looks like it's floating on the loch.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Who's this gentleman here?
This is Charles, Edith's husband, the seventh Marquis.
Okay.
In the 1930s, he was Air Minister in the British government.
Was he?
Yeah. Flying was his passion. He was responsible for the development of the Spitfire, the Hurricane radar.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The more you find out about the Londonderrys, you realise it's a family steeped in history, don't you?
Oh, it is. They were very powerful and very influential.
Lady Edith is strikingly beautiful.
She was a very attractive and commanding presence in any room. Not only was she a great social hostess, she was a political hostess and was credited with founding the Women's Legion during the First World War.
Yes, I get it.
The end result of which was women in Britain got the vote in 1918, and it was in no small measure due to Edith, Lady Londonderry. She was the driving force behind a lot of women's suffrage.
Perhaps Edith, Lady Londonderry's finest legacy here at Mount Stewart are the celebrated gardens, ranked amongst the greatest in the world, and as you wander around, you can soon see why. When Edith first saw this place, she found it rather damp and depressing, but she began to realise its potential. She fell in love with it, and during the 1920s, created a horticultural masterpiece.
Neil, this is such a beautiful place. You must love your job.
I do, yes. I mean, to work here is such a privilege.
Every day's a joy.
It is.
Did she design all of this herself and plant it up, or did she have professionals in?
Well, she did. She did it all herself, and she had some books for inspiration.
Yeah.
And she really copied a lot of things and adapted a lot of things. And really, you know, the whole garden is her expression, her artistic expression. So, yeah, she did it all herself. Well, this is the Gardens of Italy by Country Life in about 1920. And Edith's just sketched little ideas. This is this exhedral bench that we're sitting on here. Just sketching things out, and basically she'd give that to her guys to build.
On the back of an envelope?
Yeah,
Look
a
at
little
that.
envelope.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Oh, this is nice.
It is, yeah.
This echoes this too.
Yeah, but this is actually the balustrade. If you look at the pots and the balusters. So she's actually taken that as the design for the balusters there.
From the gardens of Florence.
Yeah. So it's stunning to see. And then the garden diaries Edith kept shows her evolution as a gardener, really. But in 1926, she came up with some stunning colour schemes. Look at this.
Oh, this is really nice. And this is all handwritten and hand-coloured by her.
But the actual one that she's most proud of, I think, is this one here, this sort of sunburst. This is the eastern
It's like an
side.
aerial view of what she's proposing.
She did go up onto the roof and
look down?
Look down on it. So we're using this colour scheme again, using half the plants that she used and half that I think she'd like had she been alive today.
Yes.
But if this were just a colour scheme, you'd think that was fine, in herbaceous plants and bulbs.
Yeah.
But actually what she was going for and was most proud of was not just herbaceous plants, but also shrubs, standard trees and pyramid-grown trees and standard trees in amongst the herbaceous plants. So it's got a very strong vertical plane. So you just get a sense of how beautiful, and the way she used colour, you know, in a French impressionistic way.
It's incredible, the attention to detail in this garden. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it gets you on every level, as well as the planting and the colour and the beautiful shrubs, which often you wouldn't find anywhere else growing outside in the British Isles.
One of the most notable features of the gardens is the summer house, known as the Temple of the Winds. It has one of the most extraordinary interiors, and later on in the programme, I'll be paying it a visit.
But first, our reporter Charlie Luxton has been to Cumbria in search of a small but perfectly formed object that really did have a big impact on the Industrial Revolution.
The majestic site of Windermere, the largest lake in England and one of the centrepieces of the Lake District. People come up here to walk and climb and just soak up this beautiful scenery.
Today, the lakes thrive on one thing: tourism. But 150 years ago, priorities here were rather different, and it was only the odd writer and artist who came here to admire the landscape.
Whilst William Wordsworth was penning his poetry to the north of Windermere, the hills and valleys round here started to buzz to the sound of a new industry, based totally on these bobbins. Simple wooden reels, but they were central to the Industrial Revolution. And the Lake District made them in their millions.
Nowadays, the word bobbins can be a bit of a joke. But in the 19th century, it was anything but. The bobbin is a forgotten giant of Victorian Britain, absolutely vital to industry, nowhere more so than in the cotton spinning factories of Lancashire. These multi-storey mills were the largest in the world, each with thousands of spindles. Each spindle demanded a constant supply of bobbins. And just a few hundred metres from the banks of Lake Windermere is Stott Park, now the only surviving example of a lakeland bobbin mill that once would have supported the cotton industry. Like the bobbins themselves, Stott Park seems a rather humble and quaint place, and today it blends beautifully into its tranquil woodland location.
It is an absolutely incredible place, this, isn't it? I mean, it's like, it almost feels like it's unchanged.
Well, it's unbelievable, really. It was built in 1835. There's an extension through there which was done in 1880, 1890. But after that, it's just run as it is till 1971.
I imagine you need quite a lot of bobbins for the size of the textile industry that we had.
In Oldham alone, there were 20 million bobbins.
On machines?
On machines in Oldham, yes.
And how many bobbins could this place make?
This place could produce up to 250,000 bobbins a week.
Wow.
The industry settled here because it was so close to the giant mills of Lancashire. But the lakes also meant Mother Nature could lend a hand. Local woodland provided the key bobbin ingredient: timber, birch, alder and ash. And the fast-flowing water meant power for the machines. Within 50 years of opening, though, Stott Park took production to a new level. The water wheel was out, and in its place, a newer innovation: steam.
So this engine arrived in 1880 from Yorkshire, where it had already had a previous life pumping water out of a coal mine. It's now running at about half the speed it would have done in its prime, and even then, it only produced about 30 horsepower, which is about a third of the average family car. But that was enough energy to drive all the saws and all the machinery all the way through the factory.
Amazingly, that machinery is still here and still working, which gives me the chance of a bobbin-making lesson with Stott Park guide Tracy. The lakes once produced 260 shapes and sizes of bobbin, but I'll be concentrating on just one rather modest effort. In the 1880s, the main work took place in the new lathe workshop, and 130 years later, that's exactly where I'll be working today.
I've never seen so many belts before. Look at all the belt drives. It must have been quite dangerous.
It would be, yeah. There are no guards in any of the machines, the walkways, or the belts, so yeah, you had to be very careful.
So this wouldn't have been here?
No, there'd be nothing like that there.
So how did you know where to go?
Well, they were very clever about that because of the amount of bobbins that they made. The floor level was about this high, right the way around the workshop to wound shavings. And they used to just dig out channels to get their access through the shavings. And if you always walked in a channel, you never walked into a moving belt.
One of the most ingenious bits of kit is this 1860s semi-automated drill. The drill bits have been removed, but the mechanism is in perfect order.
When the wood's been bored, you just take that board wood off and then replace it with fresh wood to be bored.
I mean, the ingenuity is just extraordinary, isn't it?
It is very clever.
Automation, though, meant that this machine could be operated by apprentices. Boys aged 8 or 9 were brought in from Lancashire workhouses. At first, they would simply strip bark and prepare fresh logs, but by the age of 12, they were operating machines like this. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, a pattern that would continue for years. With a hole now drilled through the block of wood, it's time to create something that looks more like a bobbin.
So that goes on there.
Yeah, you're going to bring the back tool in first, slowly.
When do I stop?
You keep going, do it a bit harder,
Whoa.
that's it. Now bring the front tool forward to cut out the barrel shape. There we go. That's it.
Whoa! So that's it?
That's it, the roughed out bobbin.
This is beginning to look more familiar, but a separate lathe is required to achieve the finished shape.
Hey! And look at that!
One finished bobbin.
Look at that! We've made a bobbin! Hey! Yeah.
This mill isn't just a museum. There's real history within these walls. Being here is as close as one can ever get to experiencing this lost industry of the lakes.
Today, Stock Park is still dusty and noisy and just dangerous enough to feel exciting. But imagine what it was like in the late 1800s in its heyday. During the Second World War, they diversified production to make the wooden rungs for rope ladders and the handles for shovels. Later on, they would make egg cups and yo-yos and skipping rope handles. And they were still producing bobbins commercially until 1971.
But Stock Park is lucky to retain the expertise of someone who remembers the active days of the industry. David Steely worked at a nearby mill from the age of 15.
I made a bobbin. What do you think of that?
Good. It's good as mine.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, how many of these do you think you've made in your life?
Oh, thousands. I should say millions, actually.
Millions? I mean, how many did you make a day?
Roughly on that one, around about 1,200.
A day?
A day.
Was there a real sort of camaraderie amongst the people you work with? I mean, did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got to enjoy it, otherwise you get bored. You had to enjoy it.
And what was it like as the mills were closing down? Did it really feel like the end of an era for everyone?
Oh, it did. You thought you had a job for life. They always want bobbins. But no.
It was the age of plastic that finally killed off the Lakeland bobbin industry. And of the 60-odd mills that once existed, this is the only one left intact.
Stock Park may now only produce the odd souvenir bobbins for people like me, but I love the thought that this tranquil corner of the world was once a powerhouse of production. And while industries rise and fall, it shouldn't stop us remembering that once upon a time, these seemingly inconsequential pieces of shaped Lakeland timber were fundamental to an industry that led the world.
Back in Northern Ireland, and my behind-the-scenes tour of Mount Stewart continues. What makes this place so special is that it doesn't feel like a museum. It really feels like you're walking around someone's home, just like one of the many house guests who were entertained here over the years.
Well, it's a real treat to explore the house. I like being nosy. It gives me lots of inspiration. Now, the whole house, in fact, is full of the most wonderful fine art and antiques. Everybody in the family, throughout their history, had an exceptional eye and very good taste. A lot of the furniture here was brought from their London residence. One of them was this bed. And it's got that sort of shabby chic look to it, a real sense of sort of faded elegance and a continental feel with this overhanging canopy with the family coat of arms up there. I like the fact that it's bruised and it's chipped and the gilding's flaking off. It gives it, like the rest of the house, a real sense of theatre.
But of course, sometimes the line between well-worn and worn out is a fine one. And like any historic home, Mount Stewart has suffered over the years from age. Recently, when cracks started appearing upstairs, an investigation found that a main supporting beam had started to give way, leaving the house requiring extensive work. And that, in any listed building, brings up the ongoing debate: restoration versus conservation. Bring a house back to how it looked when it was new, or leave it exactly as it was found in all its faded glory.
Well, Joe, you must see firsthand the problems, the structural problems here at the house, because you're the surveyor for the National Trust.
Yep. I have, over the past few years, I've actually seen the conditions getting gradually worse and worse. And it came to the point there basically last year where we felt something drastically had to be done.
And I guess this is where it gets difficult, because it's sort of conservation against sort of restoration, really. There's only so much you can do, isn't there?
There's only so much you can do, because we're a conservation charity.
Yeah.
So our primary aim is to conserve what we have.
Yes.
But at the same time, we can also take the chance while we're doing the conservation work to do some restoration work as well.
But it's not just the structure of the building that is suffering from the elements. The contents of all the rooms also require monitoring, as they too are starting to feel their age.
Now, there's one thing in common that all of our historic houses suffer from: that's wear and tear, and of course, light damage. Now, here's a wonderful example of what sunlight can do to an object, especially right here underneath this light scoop of the lantern up there. Look at the colour of it. You can see it's particularly quite faded, but if I turn it around, like that, look, there you are. Look at that vibrant hue of blue. Isn't that gorgeous? That's exactly how it would have been in 1750 when this chair was made. So you can see there are two choices, really: restoration, complete reupholstery, or conservation. And in this case, it's got to be conservation. It's now being carefully monitored, so it won't get any worse. But looking at this, you know, it just is such a loved chair. It has been used. There's wear and tear on it. You see here, look, where it's starting to sort of pull apart there. That's somebody's neck and that's somebody's shoulders there rubbing against it. It just gives us a picture of the social history of how it was used. It's had family ownership and it's been well loved.
When the same family live in the same house for many generations, furniture and belongings inevitably begin to accumulate over the years. Mount Stewart, with its many rooms, has become a treasure trove of unopened boxes and unseen artefacts. The cataloguing of the contents is an ongoing process, and almost every week brings a new and exciting find.
So with only half of the house open to the public, it leaves a lot of rooms to discover lots more treasure in.
Absolutely. It's quite exciting. Lots of costume, lots of other bits we're uncovering. Very exciting time to be able to get it on show.
And you're finding this on a daily basis, are you?
Reasonably, yes.
OK, can we have a look inside here? What have we got? Da-da! Wow, look at that. Whose was that?
This is Frederick IV, Marquis of Londonderry. He was a Knight of the Order of St Patrick, and this is his robes. As you can see, you've got the sash of the Order.
When does this date back to?
1856.
Gosh, it looks like it was made yesterday, doesn't it? Look,
fabulous,
quality
isn't it?
of the needlework there. Can I touch this?
Please do.
It's a wool, isn't it? It's a brushed wool.
It's brushed wool, and this feels the metallic thread here, all the detail. Again, details on the shamrock and the crown being part of the chivalric order.
Oh, look at the lining. Yeah, that's really
rich.
nice, isn't it?
Padded.
But it's the richness of the red that's as bright today as it was
jolly
150
scarlet.
years ago. Yes, yeah.
Of course, once each new find is uncovered, the challenge for Mount Stewart's custodians is, like with the rest of the house, to keep it in its current condition for future generations to enjoy. For the final part of my tour at Mount Stewart in Northern Ireland, I've saved one of the highlights, a place that is not usually open to the public. Standing to the east of the house, with fine views across the loch, is the Temple of the Winds. It was conceived by the first Marquis as a centrepiece for garden parties and outdoor entertainment. It is, in short, a summer house on a classical scale.
Well, it looks like I'm standing at the entrance of a very grand country house with fine architectural detail, fluted columns and Corinthian capitals. And if you think the outside is exquisite, wait until you see the inside. Oh, wow. Gosh, what a summer house. What a party place. Could you imagine dancing and drinking and partying underneath that flickering light? My word, and look at the ceiling. Look at the intricate detail in the plasterwork. That's by William Fitzgerald, a local craftsman, a man at the top of his genre. What a floor. I don't think I've seen anything as good as that in my life on a floor. Again, by local tradesman, John Ferguson. Mixed variety of woods here. Mahoganies, walnuts, and the lighter detail, this blonde wood, well, that's a holly. So you've got wonderful variegated hues and great depths of colour and beautiful, rich patination all over this floor. This is spectacular, and it really has stood the test of time as well. God, what a privilege to come here and see this. Well, the Temple of the Winds isn't the only tower on the estate. In fact, it's small fry compared to its bigger brother, which is all the way over there. Look at that. Can you see it? Just sticking up on the highest point of land. And it gives you an idea of just how large their estate was, because that was built on their land, look. It's massive.
Scrabo Tower was built in 1857 as a memorial to Charles Stewart, the third Marquis. He was one of the Duke of Wellington's generals in the Napoleonic Wars and the great-grandfather of Winston Churchill. Interestingly, the tower was built by subscription from local tenants. It tells much about the regard in which the Londonderry family were once held, but also how, as the 20th century arrived, their aristocratic world was destined to change.
Well, it certainly is an impressive view from up here. I can understand why the tower was positioned here, so you can see it across the loch when you're looking out the windows at Mount Stewart. I mean, it's the highest point, isn't it?
Yes.
And it is impressive once you're this close.
Yeah.
Why was it built?
Well, it was built as a mark of gratitude to the Londonderry family for their role as landlords in the famine, the Great Potato Famine. And it would have been those tenants who during the famine would have been very dependent on the goodwill of the landlord to see them through very difficult times, obviously.
Well, we're nearly there, aren't we? Yes. Do you know, it's built like a fortified building. Meant to last.
Yes.
A monument forever.
Yes, and it looks like it'll be here for a while.
Look at that view.
So you can see all the land that the family would have owned.
Were they popular further afield, or was it more about political divide?
Well, yes, in many ways the history of the family has always been about political divisions. The 7th Marquis of Londonderry, as Minister for Education in the Northern Ireland government, was very much responsible for implementing an Education Act, which in some ways was very forward-thinking and sought to introduce non-denominational education here. But this was really weakened very much by opposition, both from the Catholic Church and from Protestant church leaders as well. So never really materialised in the way he hoped it would.
Were the Londonderry family seen as outsiders?
I think in some ways by this time they actually were. I think the class to which they belonged, the landed elite as it were, was by this stage starting to become seen much more as outsiders. They didn't quite get the political divisions that existed here.
So, did this place do its job? Are they remembered and remembered fondly?
They are certainly remembered. Most people in Northern Ireland would be familiar with the name. I don't think most people would really associate this tower with the Londonderry family, and certainly when a lot of people look at this, they know it as a landmark. But in terms of remembering the famine, remembering them as landowners in this area, I think that's very much a part of history and not very much something that people are conscious of today.
Inevitably, as the 20th century progressed, the Londonderrys became increasingly detached from the political system. The cost of running their many stately homes and the burden of death duties meant that bit by bit the estates and their contents were sold off, including their beloved country retreat here in County Down.
For nearly 2 centuries, the Londonderry family were at the very heart of political and social life here in Northern Ireland and Britain. The family may now have lost its influence, but Mount Stewart, with its remarkable country house collection and magnificent gardens, stands as a lasting testament to this remarkable dynasty.